Homage to teacher Buddha Shakyamuni, homage to wisdom warrior Manjushri, homage to all lineage masters. The Dharma, profound and subtle, is rarely encountered even in a million eons. Now we are able to hear, study and follow it. May we fully realize Tathagata's true meaning. In order to liberate all sentient beings from samsara, generate supreme bodhicitta. Now let us all study together the contemplation and meditation on impermanence from the words of my perfect teacher. The teaching of impermanence is very important in spiritual practice. It helps practitioners reduce attachment and develop wisdom. Because if we do not practice impermanence, no matter how profound or lofty the Dharma we practice, we will not be able to see it through from beginning to end. This is not simply something a few of us are telling you, but the result of the personal experience of great masters and accomplished practitioners throughout history. That is why we particularly emphasize the importance of consistently practicing the preliminary practices. If you have not practiced the preliminary practices, it is possible that many teachers may still transmit some profound teachings to you. One may also obtain rather profound esoteric teachings through various means, such as reading spiritual texts or listening to experienced teachers. However, these teachings, while accessible in different ways, truly cannot resonate deeply with our own mind streams or become a genuine part of our understanding unless there is a personal connection or realization. So, just like when we build something in the world, such as when we are constructing a house, the foundation must be properly and securely established first. Just as with worldly buildings, first you need to carefully survey the site, then lay down the foundation and the base of the walls. I won't talk about too many buildings, but I will mention a little bit. Though you might find it amusing to laugh at me for this, honestly, when I work on construction, what I care about most is always the foundation. In the same way, if the foundation of our spiritual practice is not solid, we might at times temporarily experience certain mental or emotional states, or even profound realizations during our practice. Occasionally, some subtle or even obvious signs of realization may appear to us, but it is important to understand that these experiences, as they arise, will not be stable or permanent. Therefore, in our brief and fleeting human life, which passes by so quickly, we must first find the most crucial key point. Just like people in the world, for example, a butcher who kills animals. When killing an animal, one must first identify where its vital force lies. This involves finding the key points that sustain life. So, as practitioners, we should first rely on a great master with actual experience in practice. In the teachings of such an accomplished master, the teachings he expounds certainly have their reasons. Why is this so? Because great masters and accomplished practitioners have immense love for their disciples, just as a mother cherishes her children most dearly and provides them with the finest education. A mother will pass on to her child the most meaningful principles she has learned in her life. Likewise, the lineage masters do the same. Their life's purpose is to help many disciples truly attain both temporary and ultimate benefit. But how is this benefit achieved? Is it by descending from the highest state or by progressing step by step? It is always by advancing gradually, one stage at a time. That is why many great masters emphasize that the foundation of study is especially important, especially for us. If we do not study the teachings on impermanence, no matter what practice you undertake, in the end you will not succeed. In the Bodhisattva Necklace Sutra, there is a very good scriptural teaching. If a person does not contemplate impermanence, they become attached to the glories of the three realms. Like leaves that are gently blown and carried away by the wind, they drift and wander wherever their karma, their accumulated actions and past deeds, leads and directs them. This means that if we do not take the time to properly and thoroughly contemplate, reflect upon, and meditate deeply on the impermanent nature of all things, we will, without a doubt, inevitably become attached and clinging to the fleeting riches, temporary wealth, and transient honors that exist within the three realms of existence. And what is the result? It is just like fallen leaves being blown by the wind with no fixed direction. Those of us who do not practice contemplation on impermanence will also drift within the 6 realms of samsara, gently carried by the winds of karma, floating aimlessly. So it is truly frightening and unsettling. If we want to attain genuine states of spiritual realization, we must never just sit around simply feeling happy and relaxed without doing anything more. Nowadays, when some people in the world see this, they feel a sense of pity arise in their hearts. Because our bodies, as well as all of our enjoyments, including things like social status, material possessions, and wealth, are in reality all like delicate bubbles floating in water, lacking any true lasting substance or genuine solidity. Yet, despite this fundamental truth, so many people in the world remain completely unaware of it, and they blindly cling to these fleeting things, still feeling deep down that this life is extremely joyful and fulfilling, even though it is ultimately impermanent and insubstantial. If we truly understand the nature of samsara within the three realms, one will absolutely not be happy, absolutely will not sit in comfort. If one thinks, I will not die today, such ease is unreasonable. When truly contemplating impermanence and death, complacency becomes impossible. Master Shantideva also spoke in this way. If we keep thinking, I won't die today, I won't die tomorrow, and feel that life is very enjoyable right now, drinking alcohol, eating meat, and so on, living all kinds of lives filled with eating, drinking, and entertainment in society, then there is truly no real meaning in that. So, the teachings on impermanence that we are discussing now, I am also unable to explain the most profound aspects, because my own level of spiritual practice is limited. But we must carefully and repeatedly study the Vajra teachings of these great masters. If you read them over and over and contemplate them again and again, you will definitely benefit from it. Sometimes we see many people in the world who are so-called practitioners in name, but in reality they have never reflected on the contemplation of impermanence at all. Such people are only fake practitioners. They cannot be called true practitioners. Therefore, you should take a moment to thoughtfully reflect on what kind of role you actually play in this society. Are you truly worthy of your title, or is it simply just an empty name? You should examine this carefully again and again. So today, we will continue with the next part of the teaching. A lay practitioner once asked Master Patowa, if I want to focus on practicing just one Dharma, which practice is the most important? I want to practice only one Dharma, not others. Just concentrate on one practice. Nowadays, many people talk about focusing exclusively on one practice, dedicating themselves to a single Dharma. But which practice should that be? Of course, some people might answer that practicing Amitabha Buddha is very good. Some people say that practicing Zen is very good. Some say that practicing the great perfection of luminosity is excellent. Others say that studying Buddhist logico-epistemology is the best. There are probably many, many different opinions in the world. Naturally, everyone also has their own unique tips and sharp points of view, and there are reasons behind each of these perspectives. But for most of us ordinary people, when it comes to actual real-life practice, Geshe Patowa answered in this way. Geshe replied that if you truly want to focus on just one practice, then impermanence is, without question, the most important. Because the teaching of impermanence is the absolutely central key to all spiritual practice. Therefore, practicing impermanence is the most important. Why is this the case? Several reasons are given below. If you contemplate death and impermanence, first, it can serve as the cause for entering the Dharma. In the middle, it can be the condition for diligently practicing virtuous deeds. And finally, it acts as a companion in realizing the equality of all phenomena. If one practices impermanence first, they will enter the Dharma. Why is it that so many people nowadays are unwilling to truly study and practice? It's because they haven't properly contemplated impermanence. They think they still have plenty of time. But in fact, if you truly practice impermanence well, then you won't be able to wait. You'll start practicing very soon, perhaps even sooner than you might expect. I remember, in the well-known and respected text called The Extensive Biography of the Buddha, there was someone, a person whose name was Niu Quansheng, who was mentioned in the story. When Buddha Shakyamuni was accumulating merit in his previous lives, he was once such a Brahmin. He was preparing to renounce the household life, and at that time he spoke to 7 kings, saying, I am about to become a monk. Are you willing to join me in renouncing the world? They replied, right now our children are still young. Let them grow up first. This is just like what people say in society today. Only after finding a job and establishing a family can we consider it. They said, once our children have grown up, then we can become monks. Could you wait for us for 7 years? They asked. He replied, I can't wait. When impermanence arrives, no one can be certain. Later they pleaded, could you wait 5 years? How about 4 years or 3 years? Or maybe just 1 year or even 7 months? He said, no, that's not possible. He was still very urgent about it. Eventually they asked, could you wait for us just 7 days? There are still many things at home we haven't taken care of. Would 7 days be possible? In the end, the Brahmin still said, no. He insisted, "You must become monks today, right now, today." He firmly believed that if they didn't ordain today, then if they unexpectedly passed away or encountered other obstacles. There are so many people here who want to become monks. I keep telling them to wait 4 months. Is this the reason they're using to approach me today? How should I respond to this? I'll think of another teaching later. Because they have cultivated impermanence meditation very well, they all quickly ordained as monastics within a single day, demonstrating how profound contemplation of impermanence can lead to immediate renunciation of worldly life. When it comes to practicing virtuous deeds, once you've made up your mind, you can't keep delaying. If you keep putting it off, obstacles may arise. Sometimes some Dharma friends here say, "I'll go home now, take care of some important family matters, earn a bit of extra money, and make sure everything is in order." And also make arrangements at work, such as organizing schedules, this and that, various tasks and responsibilities, and so on. After another 2 years, I'll come here to become a monk. But after they go back, their original renunciation gradually fades away. People around them persuade them not to study Buddhism, not to become monks. Gradually, their original plans disappear and turn into nothing, like bubbles. That's how it happens. So when it comes to committing negative actions, we should try our best to delay them. For example, if I want to harm someone or take revenge, I should just say, "Forget it for today, I'll think about it tomorrow or next year." Keep postponing it like this. But when it comes to practicing virtuous deeds, it's best to act as quickly as possible. That's why, by contemplating impermanence, one first enters the Buddhist path, feeling that there's no time to lose. In the process, the conditions for practicing virtue arise, contemplating impermanence, practicing various teachings. For example, cultivating loving kindness and compassion, bodhicitta, taking refuge, or the meditative states in Chan Buddhism. If you want to practice these, you will do so immediately without procrastination. Because some people have a good understanding of impermanence and their practice is excellent. Whether it's doing retreats every year or arranging their daily practice routines, their spiritual practice is especially good. They feel there is no time left, so they never delay or put things off. That's why every day some people are able to practice so well. While others don't practice well, it's because they lack a sense of impermanence in their mind stream. If you truly have a sense of impermanence, you will definitely be able to get up early in the morning. And at night, you won't just collapse before it even gets dark. So even during the process of practice, you will be very diligent. By contemplating impermanence, you become more diligent as a result. Your entry into the Buddhist path will be sincere, and you will be especially diligent along the way. Then ultimately, realizing the nature of reality will not be difficult. So when we look at the great masters and accomplished practitioners in history, they did not attain sudden enlightenment for no reason at all. It was only after certain causes and conditions and diligent effort that they achieved realization. If you practice impermanence, at first it serves as the cause to cut the ties binding you to this life. In the middle, it helps you abandon attachment to the various aspects of samsara. And finally, it becomes a companion that leads you onto the noble path of nirvana. If you practice impermanence, first you will let go of your attachment to this life. Because for some of us, if the sense of impermanence does not arise in our hearts, we may not even be able to let go of our close friends and family. We can't give up our status, wealth, or all kinds of worldly fame and gain. We feel these things are so important that we can't let go of them, not even temporarily, let alone in the long run. In the middle, regarding the entirety of samsara, we also can't cut off our longing for rebirth in the heavenly realms or happiness in future lives. And in the end, we won't even have the opportunity to enter nirvana. If you truly practice impermanence, then there will be no problem at all in seeking liberation. Because once you understand impermanence, you realize that everything is suffering. The only way to truly resolve this suffering is through the sublime and transformative Dharma. You must use the wondrous and profound path to enlightenment to resolve it swiftly. Otherwise, it simply cannot be accomplished. It is also stated in the middle-length discourses of the Agama Sutra, thus all conditioned phenomena are not to be enjoyed or clung to. One should carefully observe and recognize their own faults, become weary of them, seek to abandon them, and strive for liberation. What this means is that all these worldly things are meaningless and impermanent, the so-called various phenomena and pleasures. We should first understand their true nature, then develop a sense of aversion toward them, and subsequently let them go. After letting go, we should aspire to the Dharma of liberation. Therefore, this kind of aspiration for liberation also comes from practicing impermanence. Sometimes when we read the biographies of great masters and eminent monks, or observe some elderly practitioners nowadays, why do they get up so early in the morning? What is the reason they keep practicing continuously? It's because they have a sense of impermanence in their hearts and feel that life is very short. In such a brief life, they are willing to accumulate many virtuous deeds. I think many Dharma friends here are indeed practicing very well. We can usually see that their practice is quite good. But some people are extremely lazy and distracted. Of course, the reason for this is probably related to the strength or weakness of the virtuous roots in our alaya consciousness from past lives. But in this life, it is also closely connected to our contemplation of impermanence. If someone contemplates impermanence very well, they would never casually waste time. They feel that they must accomplish what needs to be done today. The practices that should be done, the tasks that need to be completed, they would never keep postponing them. So if we truly do not understand death and impermanence, we might end up creating a lot of negative karma in this life. I often think that nowadays, many people in the world frequently create negative karma, but in the end, they will eventually come to understand. Some time ago, there were some elderly people who felt in their hearts that it was simply too late for them to learn about Buddhism, that they had awakened to this realization too late in their lives. They couldn't remember any of the teachings no matter how hard they tried. How wonderful it would have been if they had awakened when they were young. Actually, we should encourage many young people, especially those who are still studying, to learn. Why is that? If they could awaken earlier and understand the truth of samsara, they would study and practice diligently, and by the time they reach old age, they would feel confident in their hearts. Otherwise, after half their life has passed, all that remains is regret. Negligence is unknown to me, but death is truly frightening. Therefore, for the sake of this impermanent body, we personally commit many wrongdoings. This is also explained in The Way of the Bodhisattva. Because ordinary people are especially careless and negligent, they have no idea how terrifying death actually is. So, in this very life, we ourselves, for the sake of this body, as fleeting and transient as a bubble, and illusory in nature, personally commit countless negative actions. When we are nearing death, we might finally come to understand this. There are also some people who, even before reaching that point, have already grown old and now unable to do anything at all. Think, oh, throughout my life, from childhood to youth, I have committed so many negative deeds, and now it is too late even to repent. Some elderly people truly feel a deep sense of regret and emotion. The other day I looked at the ages of many people studying in the Bodhi Society now, and basically 70 to 80% are middle-aged or elderly. There seem to be hardly any genuinely young people, at least among the people we see. They are all busy with their own work, and they believe that in this life, their own livelihood, family, reputation, and relationships are the most important things. What is the purpose of living a human life? To live is to... Most people's goals nowadays are probably clear to everyone. If you look back at what you were pursuing in your 20s or 30s, you'll realize that you were especially lost at that time. Some people have already had the karmic conditions to become monastics or to study Buddhism. At that time, they suddenly become enlightened. Sigh, I used to be among so many people. Why was I chasing after such meaningless things? Many people will have this kind of realization, an understanding of the true meaning of life. So sometimes we need to consider that if someone has a deep understanding of impermanence, the Dharma they practice will definitely be profound. You could say that. If their understanding of impermanence is lacking, even if they recite sutras and practice every day on the surface, the actual benefit is not great. You could say that. Contemplating the teaching of impermanence can initially serve as a cause for generating faith. In the middle, it can also serve as a condition for diligence. Finally, it can act as an aid for the arising of wisdom. At the very beginning, because you understand impermanence, you realize that nothing has inherent meaning. Ultimately, only the three jewels, the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha, can protect us at the time of death. After understanding their qualities, you develop incomparable faith in them. Through practicing impermanence, you develop boundless faith in the Guru and the three jewels. Then, in the middle, you become especially diligent in seeking liberation for yourself. Finally, wisdom, realizing selflessness, will arise within your continuum. Or, as described in Chan Buddhism, you will reach the state of realizing your true nature and seeing your original mind. This too can only be achieved through such effort. If one contemplates impermanence and truly gives rise to it in their mind stream, At first, it can become the cause for seeking the Dharma, and in the middle, it can serve as the condition for practicing the Dharma, and finally, it acts as an aid for realizing the nature of reality. Just as mentioned earlier, if impermanence truly arises in one's mind stream, they will be willing to seek the Dharma and will not spend their days clinging to trivial worldly matters. They will abandon meaningless pursuits in their own lives and go to a quiet place or a place where there are teachings from a qualified spiritual teacher to diligently seek the Dharma. In the process, they will practice earnestly and ultimately attain realization. Now, I see that among lay practitioners in the cities, there are differences. Some people study Buddhism only on the surface. It's not very genuine. They just receive a Dharma text or simply register their name, that's all. But some study exceptionally well, and when these people study, their motivation for listening and contemplating is quite good from the very beginning. At every step and with every requirement, they carry it out earnestly and carefully. In the end, although they may not dare to claim complete enlightenment, but they still gain a certain understanding of the Dharma. This itself is a kind of awakening. Originally, I knew nothing about the impermanence of all phenomena. Now I truly understand that all phenomena are impermanent, changing from moment to moment. That was when a leader that day became extremely angry and was speechless with rage. He was so furious that he couldn't find words to express his feelings. What are you doing here? So I say, this is truly a realization. This is an awakening, genuinely. Some people say that so-called realization seems to be something completely transcendent and saintly, which is indeed difficult for ordinary people to attain. But if you previously didn't understand the principle of karma and its effects, and now you do understand it, or if you didn't know about the boundless merits of the Guru and the 3 jewels before, but now you do, doesn't this count as awakening? This should be considered a kind of awakening, albeit a minor awakening. The following teaches that if one meditates on impermanence and generates the view of impermanence in one's mind stream, profound spiritual transformation occurs. Then at the beginning it can serve as the cause for armor-like diligence. In the middle it can be the condition for preparatory diligence. And in the end it can truly become the steadfast support for unwavering diligence. These 3 types of diligence, each with their own unique qualities, are just like how some people, before entering the battlefield, first carefully put on their protective armor. When we practice diligence, we might say, starting tomorrow I will definitely be diligent. From within, it's as if we are putting on armor. There is a kind of resolve in our hearts. This is called the first step of diligence. The first step of diligence is achieved through contemplating impermanence. Everything is impermanent. From today, from tomorrow onward, I must practice. First, this kind of resolve also arises based on the understanding of impermanence. Then in the middle, you actually put it into practice through your actions. It's not just empty words, it's not like that. It's about truly putting it into practice. Ultimately, your diligence is not like doing things only when you're happy and completely giving up when you're unhappy. It's not like that. Unwavering diligence. Many sages possess diligence that does not regress. They do not give up because of their mood or because they are busy. This is diligence that does not regress. So the causes and conditions for these 3 types of diligence are also attained through impermanence. Therefore here, Pothowa Geshe concisely presents some profound principles to illustrate that contemplating impermanence is especially important for us. If we truly develop contemplation of impermanence, many principles will naturally become clear to us. This is especially important. The Venerable Fadampa also once said this. If the contemplation of impermanence arises in one's mind stream, at the beginning it can serve as the cause for entering the true Dharma. In the middle, it can act as the whip of diligence, and ultimately it can lead to the attainment of the luminous Dharmakaya. If the contemplation of impermanence truly arises in our mind stream, at the very beginning it serves as the entry into the true Dharma, just as mentioned earlier. If you do not contemplate impermanence, you may not necessarily enter the Buddhist path. Some Dharma friends here have told me this themselves. Now they are diligently practicing at the Institute, and in fact it was impermanence that initially brought them here. In the past, some lay practitioners would always say, all phenomena are impermanent. At first they thought this was just something fun or interesting to say. All phenomena are impermanent, aren't they? Later, after gradually reflecting on it, they realized that things truly are impermanent. Our families, the world outside, everything inside and out. Apart from impermanence, nothing else exists. It really makes sense. Later, through various causes and conditions, they came to the Institute. At the Institute, they have listened, contemplated, and practiced for many years without ever regressing. The very origin of it all was impermanence. For many of us Dharma friends, perhaps the reason for ordaining or studying Buddhism also began with this dependent origination. At the very beginning I thought, I'm about to start learning right now. If I keep putting it off like this, I might end up wasting this whole life for nothing. There would be no difference between me and ordinary people, and it would be such a waste. What a pity. So I chose this path for myself. I decided to study Buddhism. That's why the initial course for entering the true Dharma in the middle of the journey. If you don't contemplate impermanence, you'll be lazy and distracted every day. But with the awareness of impermanence, it's like having a whip to spur you on, constantly and carefully supervising yourself, genuinely encouraging yourself. In the end, attaining the luminous Dharma body also relies on practicing impermanence. So by truly practicing impermanence, one can achieve realization in a short time. There was once a queen, a woman admired for her grace and wisdom, who found herself with only 7 days left to live. The king, who loved her deeply and cherished her above all else, was filled with sorrow, but there was nothing he could do to change her fate. In his grief, he decided to entrust her care and well-being to a bhikkhuni arhat, a respected female monk known for her compassion and spiritual insight. Then the arhat taught her the Dharma of impermanence. As a result, after 7 days, she indeed passed away. Because of the blessing power of hearing the Dharma of impermanence, she was reborn in the heavenly realms. Later, as a celestial being, she came to the human world when Buddha Shakyamuni appeared. She listened to the true Dharma in his presence and ultimately attained realization. So looking at some of these stories, just hearing the Dharma of impermanence and then contemplating it in your mind, one can also ultimately cut off the root of samsara and attain true liberation. That's why Patrul Rinpoche said, if the genuine perception of impermanence does not arise naturally in your mind stream, then merely seeking and practicing the Dharma on a superficial level will ultimately only make you a so-called Buddhist slickster. So we should understand that it is essential for an uncontrived perception of impermanence to arise in our mind stream. What does uncontrived mean? When the Dharma teacher is giving a talk, we all say, impermanence, impermanence, yes, yes, yes. After the class is over, everyone feels that everything is impermanent. Because it was discussed today, it should be impermanent. Looking at the world of objects and the world of sentient beings, both are impermanent. But this is a perception that is deliberately cultivated and constructed through effort. That's not what it means. When the time comes, you will see that everything is impermanent, no matter what happens. It truly arises in your heart naturally and spontaneously. Whether it's status, wealth, or other people's opinions, none of these have any real meaning. They are all impermanent. It's as if you're in an illusory world. You won't cling to this world, but treat it as a vague, dreamlike experience. Many practitioners of Dzogchen and some Vajrayana practitioners, their state of mind is calm, clear, and dreamlike. In fact, those who have truly gained some insight into the principle of impermanence will not be particularly attached to worldly things. Because some people haven't contemplated impermanence, they become overly attached. It's really frightening. Sometimes when we look at society, when someone fails to achieve status, they suffer greatly and even contemplate suicide. Some people are especially and deeply attached to their relationships and families. What's the reason for this strong attachment? It's simply because they haven't truly reflected on impermanence. There was once a story about a queen consort of a king. The king and the queen had a particularly close and special relationship. Later, the king wanted to see for himself whether she was truly, genuinely attached to him or not. So he hid himself in the garden. He had his faithful servant spread the news that the king had been eaten by a tiger. When this news reached the queen's ears, she was indeed deeply and profoundly attached to him, and in the end she died from overwhelming grief. The king was also extremely saddened and deeply regretted his actions, feeling that what he had done was wrong. Afterwards, he remained very sorrowful. He then carried the queen's body with great care to the charnel ground, a solemn place where the dead are laid to rest. There he remained by her side, living with the corpse, and cried every day, his heart heavy with grief and longing for the queen he had lost. Every day he would inexplicably call out the queen's name. Some historical accounts say that in the charnel ground, with the corpse, perhaps in the end, even when it had turned into a pile of bones, he still held on to it. Some historical accounts say that he lived with this skeleton for 12 years. That's already enough time to graduate from vocational school, which typically takes several years to complete. Some say he spent 8 years in the charnel ground, a place known for its association with meditation and confronting impermanence, showing a remarkable level of dedication. Later, a master eventually arrived, intending to save him. The master carefully brought a clay pot with him, holding it gently, and also went to the charnel ground. When he quietly arrived near the charnel ground, moving slowly, he accidentally dropped the pot, causing it to fall and smash into many small pieces on the hard ground, scattering fragments everywhere. After it was broken, he continuously appeared before him in great suffering, constantly calling out the name of that jar due to his intense attachment. The king, who had originally been somewhat mentally unstable, saw that the person next to him was still crying over the broken pot, and thought it was a bit foolish that he kept shouting like that. So he went over to comfort him, saying, "Now don't cry, why are you crying? You're really quite foolish. Look, the pot is already shattered into pieces. Its original form doesn't even exist anymore, yet you're still calling out to it and crying. Where in the world is there someone as foolish as you?" Then the master replied, "It's not just me who's foolish, actually you're foolish too. Your queen's physical body. Now even her skeleton is completely gone, not even fragments remain at all." Who knows what he was thinking at that moment? Even then you were still calling out the queen's name and crying. That makes you even more foolish. Afterwards he spoke about the impermanence of all things. He truly developed faith in impermanence and in the master, and suddenly became enlightened. He was thus saved. So sometimes I think there are people in this world, people who, in their own unique ways, are saved. When they get divorced or their relationships fail at such times, we should also carefully bring some pots and place them in front of them. This is a category of pith instructions. Then, after breaking it to pieces, we could also pretend to cry in front of them. Maybe it would help, ultimately from a logical perspective. But some people, even if you explain the reasoning very clearly, someone once told me, "I understand the reasoning very well, but in my heart I feel so much pain, I really can't help it." This kind of situation can also happen. No matter what, practicing impermanence is truly a profound teaching. If we don't practice it properly, then superficial practice really won't have any significant effect. If you truly have a sense of impermanence in your heart, then any practice becomes much easier. So it's essential for everyone to lay a solid foundation. Padampa Sangye also said this: among practitioners in Tibet, he never saw anyone who had the thought of death, nor did he find anyone who remained in this world forever. He described Tibetans in rather serious terms. There are so many people in Tibet. There is actually a historical account that says, during the time of Padampa Sangye, there were about 10 million people in Tibet. If among those 10 million people there truly were not even a single person who was truly accomplished in practice among so many people. Padampa Sangye also told Milarepa at that time that in all of Tibet, you are the only one who practices well. Apart from you, there is not a single one. When it says not a single person, it is highlighting that at that time there was truly no one else present. Perhaps at that time, Milarepa had not yet met anyone. He was still alone on his path. Tibetans at that time, I think, were still pretty good. Nowadays, sometimes people look down on Tibetans. Sometimes when I observe Han Chinese here, I also have some thoughts. It seems like everyone is just attached to certain names and concepts. Even those who recite the Buddha's name never really think about liberation. They don't seem to consider being liberated from the cycle of rebirth in the three realms in their future lives. They think Sukhavati is like heaven and that they'll live happily there. It's this kind of mindset. Even for those who practice meditation, many of them never really think about it, that countless sentient beings need to be saved and that I become a Buddha for their sake. Many people just think, I feel happy when I meditate. All my troubles disappear at once. So a true practitioner, sometimes in the process of interacting with many people, whether it's with people from the monastery or with some learned people in the world or practitioners without much learning, sometimes you just can't find anyone like-minded and you feel that way, but you don't dare to say it. It's the same with Tibetans. Now, indeed, I think back to that time, the Venerable Phadampa came to Tibet 5 times. At that time, from a historical perspective, Buddhism was quite flourishing. Moreover, many great masters from the Kadampa and Nyingma schools were practicing in the mountains. It should be considered quite good. It's just that at that time, for most people, Phadampa might have seemed He said that people's practice wasn't good. No one was contemplating death and impermanence. But he also didn't find a single person who remained in this world. One after another, everyone had left this world. Monastics accumulating wealth, are they planning to offer it to the Lord of Death? Many people in monastic robes go everywhere seeking alms, trying to make money wherever they can. Every day it's all about asking for money, asking for money. Some people even now say, I want to build this or that temple, do this or that project. But if you don't have money, can you make a karmic connection for me? If you don't have money, what are you even practicing? Many people try to build or do things through all sorts of means. But accumulating wealth like this, material possessions are useless in this life. Aren't you just going to offer it all to the Lord of Death? Collecting all kinds of rare treasures and precious objects. Do you perhaps intend to secretly bribe the messengers of Yama? Because nowadays many people are amassing a great deal of gold and silver. Aren't you planning to bribe the underworld's guards? This is truly a ridiculous thing. There really are some practitioners who don't care about actual practice at all. They just focus on accumulating wealth. Seeing these Tibetan practitioners really makes one want to look up at the sky and burst out laughing. He said, seeing this is just too funny. Sometimes I feel the same way nowadays. Many practitioners appear to be practicing on the surface, but in reality they aren't truly practicing at all. It's especially laughable. Then he said, what does it mean to practice poorly? Whoever is widely learned but arrogant, and those who claim to practice well yet accumulate wealth, whoever lives in seclusion but is still scattered in mind, and whoever leaves their homeland but feels no shame. These are people who only practice in appearance. Nowadays many people fit this description. When you hear that someone is very learned and knowledgeable, you think their scholarship is impressive. But when you actually meet them, you find that this person is extremely arrogant. The more they learn, the more arrogant they become. This too is just a superficial practitioner. There are also some people who are said to be the best practitioners. They are called renunciates, said to be remarkable, great accomplished ones, great masters. But when it comes to accumulating wealth, they are even more extreme than ordinary people. Ordinary people don't have that much money in their wallets, but these people have a lot of money. They keep accumulating more every day. What's the point of that? It's useless. Some people become more and more willing to retreat to quiet places. But even in those quiet places, they try every possible way to gather lots of people, becoming extremely distracted. For example, some travel from far away to a secluded place for retreat, but in reality, they don't actually practice well. They play recordings every day. Some people, after leaving their hometowns because no one knows them there, end up doing many shameless things. This is a common problem among many practitioners. If you were in your own hometown where everyone knows you, you'd be too embarrassed to do such things. So these people are just putting on the appearance of being practitioners. They delight in committing evil deeds. Even though they have seen others die, they do not realize that they themselves will also perish. All these faults arise from not contemplating impermanence. These people love to commit evil deeds, and although they see others dying every day, they have never thought that they themselves will die. What is the reason for this? As mentioned above, what is the reason that so many people nowadays do not practice well? It is precisely because they do not contemplate impermanence. This is the cause. We who are present here are the same. If you are not practicing well now, whether you are a monastic or a layperson, in the end, it is impossible for us to become truly good practitioners. If we contemplate impermanence well, even Mahayana practices will succeed. After you have meditated on impermanence, great compassion in the Mahayana tradition will naturally arise. Sentient beings are like reflections of the moon in moving water. Just as it is stated in the Entering the Middle Way, all sentient beings are truly pitiable, just like the moon in water, drifting here and there. Naturally, compassion arises for them. Therefore, both compassion and renunciation are born from contemplating impermanence. Thus, it is said that whatever is impermanent is all suffering. Arideva also taught this: whatever is impermanent is suffering. For those sentient beings, you must first understand that they are all impermanent. If something is impermanent, it is definitely suffering. There is no real happiness in it. Now, some people think that I found a job, so I'm happy. I have a family, so I'm happy. But actually, that's not the case. Many people, for example, get married today or hold some joyful ceremony today. But we all clearly know that today's laughter will turn into tomorrow's tears. Many people with even a little realization secretly find this amusing. They wonder, what's the use of clinging to these worldly things? There's no real meaning in it. They think this way, believing that things lack any deeper significance. So, here it is said that not contemplating impermanence, or failing to reflect on how everything is constantly changing and nothing lasts forever, truly brings many faults and problems. After practicing contemplation on impermanence, even people who don't study Buddhism, sometimes through reflecting on impermanence, are able to find their own way in life. I remember that many Dharma friends here have read the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying before. Written by Sogyal Rinpoche, it says inside that, around 1978, there was an American woman who was diagnosed with a terminal illness. After being diagnosed by the doctors, she tried everything she could. In the end, nothing worked. Later, she heard that a Tibetan master had come to New York, so she went to visit him. Actually, that was the second Dudjom Choje, as you may recall. When she went to see him, Sogyal Rinpoche was there to interpret, helping to translate their conversation and ensure clear understanding between them. When she met the Choje, she immediately sensed his great compassion, which was so genuine and heartfelt that she was deeply moved. Overcome with emotion, she began to cry, feeling a profound sense of closeness and connection to him in that moment. But when many lay practitioners say they feel close, it's not always genuine. Sometimes when he saw some red robes, for example, he used to often see people with hair, and then suddenly saw someone without hair. He found it quite endearing. So when some lay practitioners say that we monastics are very approachable, I don't really believe it. Maybe people's ways of thinking are a bit different. But at that time, although she said she really felt close, she was also very deeply sad. She spoke in front of the Choje. She quietly said, "My life is actually very short. Can you please help me with this? I'm going to die soon. I only have a few months left to live." Then the Choje laughed heartily and said, "It's not just you who will die soon. We're all waiting for death. It's only a matter of sooner or later. We're all waiting for death." With only just a few words from him, it seemed she had seemingly already discovered the truth of life. Later, in his presence, she also received some teachings on how to face death. She learned some key instructions on how to accept death and so on. After listening to a series of teachings, she finally took refuge in Buddhism. It seemed that she was no longer afraid of death and continued to practice diligently. As a result, and quite miraculously, her illness was cured, and she did not die at that time. This outcome was unexpected, and those around her found it remarkable that she recovered. However, this does not mean that she would never die, as everyone must eventually face death. The author mentions that he has heard many similar stories, where people in the midst of illness found hope or even healing by contemplating impermanence. By reflecting on the fact that all things are subject to change and nothing lasts forever, they were able to find some peace during difficult times. And by consistently and diligently practicing these profound and insightful teachings of Han Buddhism, once their attitude and mindset in their heart and mind had completely and fundamentally changed, they were able to eliminate much suffering and misfortune. So, practicing contemplation of impermanence is indeed very important indeed, and certainly worthwhile. Whether for lay people or monastics, this is indispensable and must be practiced. It's not just about practicing on the surface. We must truly practice according to these teachings in real life. Therefore, contemplating impermanence is the prerequisite for opening the door to all spiritual practice. A lay practitioner once asked Geshe Potwa for instructions on how to eliminate negative karma. Geshe Potwa replied to him saying, "You should repeatedly contemplate death and impermanence. If the single thought of inevitable death arises in your mind, then purifying negative karma will not be difficult, and practicing virtuous deeds will also not be difficult. This is the first step. This teaching is very important, and everyone must remember it." Previously, when I taught the words of my perfect teacher, I asked everyone to memorize this teaching, as well as the following teaching from Jigme Gyalwe Nyugu. If we repeatedly contemplate death and impermanence, eventually an unshakable conviction will arise in our hearts, the thought that everything is impermanent. At that point, it will not be difficult at all for you to abandon negative actions and practice virtuous deeds. You see, many people nowadays have difficulty with the contemplation of impermanence, and even 100 days of meditation practice can be quite challenging for them. Reciting 1,000,000 mantras is also quite difficult. Even completing the 500,000 preliminary practices is challenging. Why is that? It's because our contemplation of impermanence is not thorough. If our contemplation of impermanence is strong, then practicing virtuous deeds every day will not be difficult at all, truly. So, the very first step is to meditate on impermanence. Once you have meditated on impermanence, it will not be difficult to do good and abandon evil. This is the first stage, and everyone must remember it. Then on this basis, if you can consistently practice and give rise to compassion in your mind stream, then benefiting sentient beings will also not be difficult. Earlier, we said that after meditating on impermanence, doing virtuous deeds is not difficult. Then on this foundation, you begin to repeatedly contemplate how sentient beings are trapped in samsara and are truly pitiable, and then you cultivate compassion. Finally, if great compassion arises in your mind stream, then benefiting sentient beings will not be difficult at all. Some teachers have especially strong compassion. No matter how unwell they are physically or how bad their mood is, it doesn't hinder them in the slightest. Why is that? Because if there is compassion in the heart, everything is motivated by compassion and there will be no difficulties. Benefiting sentient beings is regarded as one's own responsibility. Just as a mother does anything for her child without complaint, in the same way, when we have compassion in our mind stream, benefiting sentient beings will not be difficult at all. If there is no compassion in one's mind stream, even asking them to do a little thing, they'll say, "Oh, how much does this pay? How much are you giving me? I can't do it." That's why some people are always bargaining. They don't see benefiting sentient beings as anything important at all. If, on top of this, one further practices the true nature and emptiness of all phenomena, and this has already arisen in one's own mind stream, then at that time, purifying confusion will not be difficult either. This is relatively advanced. On the basis of cultivating compassion, as mentioned earlier, if one continuously practices the emptiness and selflessness of all phenomena, in the end, if everything is seen as emptiness and selfless, then our current attachment to all kinds of worldly confusions and myriad things will be easily eliminated. The naturally pure meditative states of Vajrayana practice will also arise easily. Therefore, contemplate impermanence, contemplate compassion, and contemplate emptiness. These three are the teachings left to us by Geshe Potowa. However, there needs to be an order to this. First, contemplate impermanence. Once the foundation of impermanence is established, then cultivate compassion. After the foundation of compassion is established, then contemplate emptiness. Otherwise, if you start with Vajrayana empowerment, "Give me an empowerment. Please do it well, Master. You must empower me properly." After receiving the empowerment, then you go back to contemplate compassion and then contemplate impermanence. In this way, the sequence is a bit off. You should start from impermanence and proceed step by step in your practice. If you can truly give rise to the contemplation of impermanence in your mind stream, then you will definitely be able to completely abandon attachment to all worldly things in this life, just like someone with nausea refuses to eat oily food. If we truly develop the concept of impermanence in our mind stream, then the wealth, fame, and all sorts of various worldly matters and concerns in this life. Just like someone who already has nausea, they feel a strong aversion toward any kind of food and have no interest in eating it. In this state, even the mere thought of food can be unappealing or unpleasant. If you put some greasy food in front of them, such as a dish that is oily or rich, their discomfort may increase, and they might want to avoid it even more. They are even less willing to eat it. It's just like that. One would not want to be attached to anything in this life. The author says this: "My Supreme Guru, the Venerable Jigme Gyalwe Nyugu, has stated on more than one occasion, no matter whom I see in the world, no matter how noble, authoritative, wealthy, or handsome they are, I would not feel any envy toward them. Instead, I focus on the deeds of the great masters and accomplished beings of the past. This is because a little sense of impermanence has arisen in my mind stream. Apart from impermanence, I have no other, nor do I possess any more profound or deeper teaching or instruction to pass on or share with others. This particular teaching is truly genuinely important and significant. Everyone, without exception, should be aware of and remember the name of Jigme Gyalwe Nyugu. When he saw who had money or status in the world, who had fame, or who possessed all kinds of wealth and honor, not even for an instant did he feel envy, attachment, or clinging. Why was this? Because he had a certain faith in the spiritual practice of the great masters and accomplished beings of the past. And what was the reason for this? It was because a little sense of impermanence had arisen in his own mind stream. Apart from impermanence, there is no more profound Dharma to pass on to everyone. Therefore, we should keep in mind the precious teachings left to us by the great masters of the Nyingma, Kagyu, and Kadam lineages. These teachings are extremely valuable. We must all remember them. But are we like this? No, we are not. When we see someone else with a nice house, we think, "Oh, that's so nice. Will I ever have something like that?" When we see others driving luxury cars or becoming directors or county heads, we think, "Wow, my classmates have already achieved these things. I should also try every possible way to gain a certain status," and so on. All of this is just being caught up in gain and loss. But when you reach a certain level, as we have mentioned before, not to mention attaining such a state of spiritual practice, even some worldly people can leisurely watch the flowers bloom and fall in the courtyard, unconcerned about coming or going. Just as we discussed before, they truly view things with detachment. When the entire contemplation of impermanence appears before you, everything is taken as it comes and goes, without any particular attachment or greed. So what is the threshold for developing firm conviction in impermanence within one's continuum? It's just like before, with Geshe Karakongchung. When Geshe Karakongchung was practicing in the caves of Jomo Karla Mountain in western Tibet, there was a thick patch of thorny bushes at the cave entrance that would often snag and catch his clothes as he passed by. At first he thought about cutting them down, but then he reconsidered. Sai, I might die inside this cave and never make it out. Who knows if I'll even have the chance? So he decided that practicing the sublime Dharma should take priority. He didn't cut them down when he went in. When he came out of the cave again, he thought about it once more because his clothes got snagged again. He considered cutting them down again, but then he thought, who knows if I'll ever return to this cave? So he never did cut down that patch of thorn bushes. In this way, the master continued to practice in the cave for many years. In the end, he attained realization, yet the thorn bushes still remained untouched. The master had achieved realization, but the thorn bushes were never cut down. On the surface, this seems like an ordinary story, but it actually contains a very profound meaning. Our own actions are not like this. We always insist on building a very nice house. I've seen some Dharma friends build really nice houses, and I think they're quite impressive. Today I looked at several houses and felt my impermanence meditation was quite good. If Geshe Karakongchung had seen this, he would have greatly rejoiced. There is another exemplar of impermanence practice, that is the Vidyadhara Jigme Lingpa, who demonstrated perfect understanding of impermanence through his renunciation and spiritual accomplishments. Ngawe Tzu is actually the Venerable Jigme Lingpa. Venerable Jigme Lingpa had a bathing pool that he used in the 7th month of autumn. There were no steps, so it was very difficult to get in. His disciples asked if they could build some steps there. But the master replied, I don't know if I'll even have the chance to bathe here next year, because in his heart he truly held this contemplation. He always consistently refused, thinking, what's the point of spending so much of his valuable time on this? He often instructed his disciples to meditate on impermanence. Nowadays, many people keep putting off their practice, but when it comes to things other than spiritual practice, they rush to get them done. For example, if it's about building a house, they hurry to build the house first. They say, I'll practice next year. But these great masters always put practice first. Building houses and other things can wait until next year. Tomorrow, and yet another tomorrow. How many tomorrows there truly are in our lives? If I simply wait for tomorrow, then everything, all that I hope for, will eventually be wasted. So in the end, everything is wasted. But we let our spiritual practice slip away, postponing it again and again. Sometimes I really feel ashamed. For example, when I'm supposed to recite scriptures today, I think, forget it, I can't do it today, I'm too tired. I'll recite them tomorrow. But when tomorrow comes, there are new things to do. Tomorrow doesn't work either, so I say, I'll recite them the day after tomorrow. So the most precious time in a day truly never comes back. But there's nothing we can do about it. There's a poem by Tao Yuanming from the past. I think, although he wasn't a practitioner and didn't specifically talk about impermanence, sometimes his insights into the world are still quite profound. Youth does not return. A day cannot dawn twice. Seize the moment and encourage yourself, for time waits for no one. He said that in a person's life, the period of youth and the prime years can never come again. The most precious and valuable time in a day is the morning, but even the morning hours cannot return. So, there are important things we should do, things that we truly ought to do right now, without any hesitation or unnecessary delay. Otherwise, time waits for no one. It won't wait for us. A lot of our spiritual practice these days is always being postponed like this. If we keep putting things off like this, it really isn't a good thing. So, before such a firm understanding arises in our own mental continuum, we must set our intention during the preliminary practices. And during the main practice, do everything we can to adjust our minds. In any case, before this realization arises in our continuum, before we develop an unaltered view of impermanence, we need to keep practicing. We really must before such a firm understanding arises. Many people ask me, how many days should I practice impermanence now? This has already been explained very clearly. Before such a realization arises in your continuum, it doesn't matter if you practice for 100 days, 200 days, 3 years, 5 years, or however many days it takes. In any case, in your own continuum. Ultimately, everything else is meaningless. Only practice has true significance. Before such understanding arises, you must keep practicing. When you practice, set your motivation, generate bodhicitta for all sentient beings. When practicing Guru Yoga, pray for the blessings of all Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, Dharma protectors, and Dakinis to be bestowed upon me. May the concept of impermanence definitely arise in my mind stream. Close your eyes and sincerely pray in this way. Then use various methods to adjust your mindset. Contemplate impermanence. Whether through study or actual practice, you must contemplate impermanence. Only after this realization truly arises should you dedicate the merit of this realization to all sentient beings. Conclude the practice with dedication and seal it with aspiration prayers. It is essential to follow in the footsteps of the noble predecessors, practicing diligently and wholeheartedly. Even when impermanence is right before us, we still cling to the notion of permanence. Even as old age arrives, we still think of ourselves as young. May I and all sentient beings with deluded minds like mine give rise to the realization of impermanence. Please grant your blessings. This is the final summary by Patrul Rinpoche, who says, "For people in this world, impermanence is already right before their eyes. If we look at all things and phenomena around us, including our own friends and family, and our own mindset, all the various examples in our surroundings are actually teachers of impermanence. Yet even when impermanence is clearly right before our eyes, we still cling to the belief that this or that will last forever. We even regard our own body and lifespan as permanent. Even when we have grown old and old age has arrived, we still think we are very young. Some people in their 40s think, I'm not 50 yet, I'm still young. People in their 50s think, I'm not 60 yet, I'm still young. Those in their 60s say, I'm not 70 yet, I'm still young. So we always consider ourselves to be young. In the end, all these young people have already left this world. That's why Patrul Rinpoche, with great humility, said, of course, Patrul Rinpoche himself was not personally attached to the idea of permanence like this. But for me, and for many other confused sentient beings like myself, may, in their mental continuum, they rely on the blessings of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas to give rise to the awareness of impermanence. Because if we have the concept of impermanence in our minds, then practicing any Dharma becomes much easier. There's no need for the teacher to supervise us every day, like a dormitory supervisor watching over elementary school students, holding a whip asking, did you practice today? Steward, you have to keep an eye on them. There's no need for a steward, nor is there a need to set a fixed time. Naturally, it becomes impossible not to practice on your own. Even if the teacher asks you not to practice, you can't help it. You might even ask, Master, could you please give me permission? I need to practice right away. There's no time to lose. Life won't wait for me. Everything changes so quickly. Impermanence can come in an instant. You might even ask, could you allow me to practice for just 1 hour a day? That's how eager you'll be. It's impossible to have a steward watching over you every single day, or to constantly use all sorts of methods to supervise you. No one will need to ask, can you do the preliminary practices? It just won't be like that. So, in our own mind streams, we truly rely on the blessings of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. May the contemplation of impermanence arise in the mind streams of all Dharma friends with whom we share a connection. From the sacred realm of Mount Wutai, may the blessings of Manjushri enter our hearts. We pray to the feet of Jigme Phuntsok for the blessings of the realization lineage. May the treasure necklace of Togol's snow mountains become a garden of virtues. We pray to Longchen Rabjam, gentle yogi of twofold essence. May Manjushri's wisdom arise in us, and may we study Samantabhadra's aspirations and deeds. To those who uphold the activities of the Buddhas and their children, we pray at the feet of the Manjushri-like Guru. May the supreme blessings of the Guru's body, speech, and mind fully merge into the mind streams of all disciples, so that we may accomplish the expansive and meaningful activities of spreading the Dharma and benefiting all sentient beings. Gitopo. May every sentient being give rise to the contemplation of impermanence. The guidance on the impermanence of life concludes here.
Chupun Sulen Prasha Bangarangara Bana Savarda Bangarangara Bana Sada Bangarangara Bana Savarda